Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bhakti Fundamentals. Last week, we were discussing with some of the Bhakti Fundamentals group, and someone made the point that we often hear the line, "Well, I have my beliefs and you have yours," in relation to spiritual life. Now, at first glance, this line sounds polite, even humble, like a respectful way to avoid argument. But if we pause and examine it more closely, we find it rests on a faulty foundation, that all spiritual ideas or opinions are equally valid simply because someone believes them. But we learn in the Bhagavad Gita that truth doesn't bend to belief. Sometimes we find that people's viewpoints on spiritual topics are shaped by their material situation in life, their background, desires, culture, emotions, and personal life experiences. And at other times, people hold certain spiritual beliefs because those ideas feel easier, or more comfortable, or more palatable, more fun, or maybe believing a certain way means they don't have to change much in their lives. For example, someone might believe we only live one lifetime, one and done, because it's simpler to conceive of just this one lifetime, and because we can't remember our previous lifetimes. But when someone believes something about spiritual life just because it feels comfortable or familiar, they're looking through the lens of material conditioning. That means they're influenced by the material consciousness they've developed based on their particular life circumstances, their upbringing, desires, fears, and material attachments, etc. Now, having personal opinions is fine when we're talking about, say, music, movies, etc., where everyone naturally has different tastes. But spiritual life isn't based on personal preference. Spiritual life is a path to find out what's actually true, to uncover the supreme absolute truth. And spiritual truth is not relative, because if everyone were right in their own personal opinions about spiritual life, then nothing could ever be wrong. But even a quick glance at the world shows us much isn't right. Fire burns whether we believe it or not. In the same way, spiritual truth is not something we invent through imagination or emotion. Rather, it is something we uncover by approaching a reliable source. Spiritual life is prescriptive, not subject to our personal whims or preferences. In the Bhagavad Gita, Kṛṣṇa does not say, "Whatever you believe is fine." Instead, he speaks with full authority and reveals the process for gaining spiritual knowledge. He says in the Gita, "Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth." So in Bhakti Yoga, we don't rely on our own guesses or personal opinions about spiritual life. We learn spiritual truths from those who know them, beginning with Kṛṣṇa himself in the Bhagavad Gita and other śāstras or scriptures. Then we apply those teachings in our own lives, and by living according to those principles, we gradually begin to realize the truth for ourselves, not just as a theory, but as something we actually experience. Srila Prabhupada often emphasized that Bhakti Yoga, spiritual life, is a science. It is not sentiment or blind faith, not speculation or guesswork. And like any genuine science, it operates on objective laws and principles, not on personal opinions or emotional preference. For example, we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and other śāstras or sacred texts that karma and reincarnation are spiritual laws, just like gravity is a physical law. While our minds might initially resist the idea of, say, reincarnation, we can look at the topic logically. We can clearly see how our bodies are constantly changing, from childhood to youth to adulthood and eventually old age. And Kṛṣṇa explains in the Bhagavad Gita that just as we change bodies during this lifetime, we also change bodies again at the time of death for our material bodies. He says, as the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. So in Bhakti Yoga, we don't base our understanding of spiritual life on personal beliefs or speculation. We base it on higher spiritual authority, specifically Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Guru refers to our spiritual teacher or teachers, those who guide us, explain the scriptures to us, and help us apply them in daily life. A genuine guru must practice what they preach, and everything they teach must align with the other two sources of spiritual truth, Sadhu and Shastra. This creates a spiritual system of checks and balances, ensuring we arrive at actual spiritual truth. Sadhu refers to the body of saintly practitioners, those who are actively practicing Bhakti Yoga sincerely. And finally, Shastra refers to the sacred texts, like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which reveal eternal spiritual truths and are accepted by generations of great spiritual teachers. In this way, we can understand that the Supreme Himself, Kṛṣṇa, through bona fide gurus or teachers, through the body of sincere bhakti practitioners, and through authoritative scriptures, tells us exactly how to make progress on the path of Bhakti Yoga, which is the direct path to Him and to the spiritual world, our true home. By relying on Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra for spiritual knowledge, we gain access to truth that is higher than our own limited experience or opinion. This is the proper and time-tested way to receive spiritual knowledge. And in this way, we ensure that our spiritual life is not based on blind faith, because spiritual truths received this way are confirmed in sacred texts, explained by self-realized souls, Guru and Sadhu, and supported by our own observations, reasoning, and internal experiences as we practice Bhakti Yoga. Thus, this approach to receiving spiritual knowledge gives us a clear and reliable foundation, not vague feelings or personal theories, but truth that can be understood, tested, and eventually realized. For example, the Bhagavad Gita describes this world as dukhalayam ashashvatam, a place of misery where everything is temporary. We can all see this. No matter how hard we try to control life, ultimately, in the material sense, things fall apart. Relationships change, bodies age, situations shift. Common sense and everyday experience confirm what the Gita says. This world is full of uncertainty, suffering, and impermanence. So in Bhakti Yoga, we don't blindly accept spiritual teachings. We hear spiritual knowledge attentively from authoritative sources. Then we reflect on that knowledge deeply. We observe our own life and the world around us, and we implement spiritual practices such as chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra that purify our consciousness and help us see more clearly. And gradually, by engaging in spiritual practices that cleanse our consciousness, we begin to realize the truth for ourselves. To this point, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, this knowledge of spiritual life is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. In other words, spiritual knowledge is not theoretical. It can be directly experienced. Through sincere practice of Bhakti Yoga, covered in many of our other videos, we don't just believe the truth. We begin to see it and experience it for ourselves. And in the end, it's such a relief, such a gift to know that spiritual life doesn't have to be guesswork. We're not left to blindly believe in God or the afterlife or just hope for the best. Through the Bhagavad Gita, we're given the certainty of spiritual truth, tattva, spoken directly by the Supreme Person, Kṛṣṇa, God Himself. The Gita clearly explains 5 foundational truths: Ishvara, the Supreme Lord; Jiva, the individual spirit souls like you and me; Prakriti, material nature; Kala, time; and Karma, action and reaction. And the Gita explains how these 5 interact and exert their influence. In studying the Gita, we learn that these are not vague theories, they are realities. As we walk the path of Bhakti Yoga, which refers to the path of linking to the Supreme, Kṛṣṇa, through loving devotional service, we come to understand and experience these truths more deeply. They're not just ideas we agree with. They become part of how we see the world and how we live each day. What we'll find is that real spiritual knowledge allows us to navigate this world with a steadier mind because we're anchored in true understanding of who we are as spiritual beings, of Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Person, and of our eternal relationship with Him. Bhakti Yoga begins with Shraddha, or faith, but it doesn't end there. It's not blind faith. Rather, Bhakti Yoga is a scientific process meant to lead us to direct realization of the Supreme. As Kṛṣṇa promises in the Bhagavad Gita, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So Kṛṣṇa reciprocates with our efforts to reach Him. By contrast, merely believing in spiritual truths without practice or realization leaves us in the realm of uncertainty, of merely wishing and hoping. But why leave something as important as our relationship with the Supreme on the back burner? Why live our lives based on spiritual hearsay when Kṛṣṇa is inviting us to know Him in truth? Thus, spiritual knowledge enables us to move from the realm of belief to direct experience of transcendence. And such spiritual knowledge allows us to one day transcend this uncertain material world entirely when we perfect our spiritual practices and fully link back to the Supreme via yoga, Bhakti Yoga. And that is the goal of life. So that's all we have for today on the topic of belief versus fact or truth when it comes to spiritual life. Please let us know your thoughts on the video, and if you have any questions that we can answer in a follow-up one. In the meantime, thank you for listening today, and we'll see you next time on Bhakti Fundamentals.